Hello and welcome to my latest career video. Now this career video features another fighter joining my welterweight playlist, following on from Barbados Joe Walcott, and it is a fighter called George Green, who didn't have a large career, sub 30 fights in professional fights, kind of more immortalised by his pseudonym name Young Corbett, which of course was followed by Young Corbett the second at featherweight, and then of course by, to me, the greatest of the Young Corbetts, Young Corbett the third, the welterweight and middleweight of later decades. So this is George Green, aka Young Corbett. So let us go to his major opponents. And from a smaller career, you wouldn't expect him to have an enormous amount of major fights. But he still does manage to fight Mysterious Billy Smith, the two-time linear welterweight champion and Hall of Famer on 2 occasions, scored in 1 win, 1 loss and no draw. George Green also fights the Barbados Demon Joe Walcott in a singular fight, but suffers a defeat. And he fights the great Tommy Ryan. George Green is actually one of only a few men who have held a win over the great welterweight, middleweight champion Tommy Ryan. George Green is one of those rare fighters who has actually beaten Tommy Ryan. Now he actually fought Tommy Ryan in a trilogy, scoring 1 win, also suffering 2 losses with no draws. George Green then also defeated capable contender Owen Ziegler on 2 occasions from 2 fights. He also beat the very capable contender Charlie McKeever in a singular fight, and another very capable contender Dan Creedon also in a singular fight. Both Owen Ziegler, all 3 of them, Owen Ziegler, Charlie McKeever and Dan Creedon, have many good wins and mixed in really, really tough company. So the final fight on here, is against Danny Needham. George Green fought him to a draw. So from his 27 professional fights, 11 of them are listed there, so it's still quite a good percentage of his small number of fights who are major opponents. George Green has 6 wins, 4 losses and 1 draw. So when we move on to the next slide, KOs and rounds boxed, George Green scored 8 knockouts in his career, 1 of them inside 3 rounds or less and 1 in the first round. He also scored 1 KO against champion, 1 KO against a Hall of Famer, and he scored 3 KOs against pound for pound rated fighters. George Green, of course, pre-rating era, so he has 0 KOs against rated fighters. Now George Green fought a total of 348 professional career rounds, so averaging over 10 rounds apiece, well over 10 rounds apiece for his fights. He fought 0 title fight rounds. George Green did fight 86 rounds against champions, 86 rounds against Hall of Famers, and 132 rounds against pound for pounders, despite his small career total. Now if you think about that, that's the equivalent of 11 12-round distance fights against pound for pounders. He only had 27 fights, so he had a lot of fights against pound for pounders, although some of them went beyond, to a number of rounds. So against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions, George Green fought no rounds. So when we go on to the first of the more niche opponent categories, the champion slide, George Green had 6 fights against champions with 2 wins, 4 loss and no draw. He defeated 2 individual champions. They were Mysterious Billy Smith and Tommy Ryan, 2 outstanding fighters from their time, one a bit more dirty than the other, and he scored a knockout over one of those champions, Mysterious Billy Smith. So on to the Hall of Fame slide, George Green had 6 fights against Hall of Famers, the same with 2 wins, 4 loss, no draw, and it's identical to the champion slide. He beat 2 Hall of Famers, Mysterious Billy Smith and Tommy Ryan, and scored knockout over 1 Hall of Famer individually, Mysterious Billy Smith. So on to his largest category, the pound for pounders. So George Green had 10 fights, against pound for pounders from only 27 professional fights. So he scored 6 wins, 4 loss and no draw, and he defeated 5 individual pound for pounders. They were Owen Ziegler, Mysterious Billy Smith, Charlie McKeever, Dan Creedon and the great Tommy Ryan, and he scored knockout or stoppage over 3 of those 5 pound for pounders, Owen Ziegler, Mysterious Billy Smith and Charlie McKeever. So there is the major opponent category breakdowns done. On to his rated opponent slide, and pre-rating era, like all the pre-rating era fighters, only the odd one will have a small number in there. He has 0s against top 10, 0s against top 3, and 0s against ring champions. So George Green defeated no individual rated fighters and also scored knockouts over 0 rated fighters individually. And when we go on to his title fight slide, it's another blank slate. George Green did fight for a non-established title. He fought for a title recognised, but it wasn't one of the main world titles, so therefore I do not factor it. So he has no title fights. His title fight record is no win, no loss, no draw, with no defences and no KOs. He of course scored no wins against top 10, top 3 fighters or ring champions in title fights, and also no wins against champions, Hall of Famers or pound for pounders. So on to the final slide. Okay, titles won. George Green was never a world champion, so he held no world titles, therefore was never regarded as a lineal champion nor an undisputed champion. So a short video there. George Green, you know, we had Joe Jeanette, we had Kid McParland. McParland had a much smaller career than Joe Jeanette, but still significantly larger than George Green's. But in that short career, you know, he's one of a few men to defeat one of the greatest fighters of that era, Tommy Ryan, who was a welterweight and middleweight champion. And defeating Tommy Ryan was not an easy task, you know, as George Green found out in the other 2 fights against him. But he still has that win over one of the greatest fighters of that entire 20-30 year period in Tommy Ryan. So he was a capable fighter, never captured a world title, goes forgotten by many. People mention, oh, there were 3 young Corbetts. Most people who mention that, aside from the historians, know very little about him. So there's a little video to highlight him and his career a little bit more. So more videos coming over coming days. I'm the Boxing Librarian, and I'm out for now.